Okay, so the underlined sentence is over here. I notice a keyword because. So whatever happens above, because they have a heat exchange network which kept. You know, we're trying to say they have a network, a heat exchange network, you know, that keeps the brain from getting too hot. So the answer is probably B. So we mark B as our final answer and move on. So what's going on here? They're basically testing you on that versus which. This is framework number 5. And you use which when you're describing a general description, but we're talking about heat exchange networks, right? So there's lots of different kinds of heat exchange networks, and the kind we're talking about is the kind that keeps the brain from getting too hot. Now, on the other hand, if you were talking about heat exchange networks and you were kind of like, you know, defining what a heat exchange network was, and you're saying, well, yeah, heat exchange networks in generally, all of them, you know, keep the brain, you know, from getting too hot. Well, in that case, you would use a comma, and then you would say, you know, which keep the, you know, certain brains, you know, hot or cold or whatever. But in this case, you're just talking about out of all heat exchange networks, we're talking about the kind that keeps the brain from getting too hot. So that's why B is the correct answer. All of these other answer choices that has been keeping, having, you know, these are all more complicated than it needs to be. B is really what we want. So as a recap, we saw the underlined sentence was short. We saw it was testing us on that versus which. And we saw the keyword because. And so these things combined allowed me to not even bother reading this part. I focus in on this word because they have a heat exchange network which, or because they have a heat exchange network that. And since this is, you know, limiting the scope of what we're talking about, this is not a definition or complete description. It's rather a something that restricts the scope of these heat networks. We use the word that, and that keeps is correct. Answer choice B.